Blackout by Candace Owens. Quick disclaimer before I move any further, because I know that there are people, that there are people who are going to unsubscribe because I reviewed this book. On this channel, I will review maybe 9 or 10 personal development and business books before reviewing any political book. So I think it's only fair for people watching to understand that with my political beliefs, what I think is important has hardened into what everyone, or at least the biggest majority of people possible, can agree on, like a base idea of bipartisanship. Ever since checking out How to Destroy America in 3 Simple Steps by Ben Shapiro, the only other notable conservative book I've checked out, which I loved so much that I actually named it my favorite book of 2020, the more something unites us, the more American it is. And the more something divides us, the less American it is. Can we agree on that? I think that makes the most sense, as most Americans do believe in unity. A few people recommended this book to me on this channel, and I was like, what's a Democrat plantation? Looking at the subtitle. It sounds polarizing, and I looked more into Candace Owens, and I was like, this all just sounds very polarizing. Candace Owens addresses the many ways that the Democratic Party policies hurt rather than help the African American community, and why she and many others are turning right. Okay, that actually doesn't sound as polarizing as I remember, but it definitely sounds rather contrarian. But Democrat plantation? Those 2 words sound so, like, I never would have expected to go such a short time in my life without hearing them. Welcome to my channel. My name is Samuel, and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, because I don't want to do it alone, then make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. It helps with ranking and SEO and all this other stuff, and I really appreciate it because so much work goes into making these videos. Okay, a lot of work really goes into making these videos. However, what I was concerned with about this book was, is it just a bunch of party bashing and negativity and bias? The short answer is no and yes. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it. All I know is that Candace Owens is an African American Trump supporter. So maybe I could expect some talk of, here's what really made me question why I believe and condone what I believe and condone. In the beginning, that's definitely what I found. But what I'm sure of is, if she feels so strongly that Democratic Party policies are hurting the African American community, and a very vast majority of the community disagrees, and yet this lady actually has an explanation. Mind you, plenty of energy to go around. Maybe it's worth hearing what she has to say, you know? Like, open your mind to conflicting viewpoints. See what's out there. I don't understand what prevents people from doing this. Pride, ego, like identity. I mean, those could all be reasons to do it anyway. Regardless, this is wonderfully written. I love the chapter layout. It's very organized and simple, but what a challenge it was. It was a fun challenge. It was a pleasure to review this. Clash my mind into a book like Blackout. I mean, listen to this hard-nosed intro quote. When I was born, Jackie Robinson had broken the modern baseball color barrier just a few years earlier. When I was born, interracial marriage was still illegal in several states. Of the post-civil rights era blacks, the well-dressed tenured professor types on CNN and NBC, what was their struggle? Microaggressions? He or she was followed in a department store? Someone mistook him or her for a store clerk? Oh, the humanity! When I heard this, I just figured, well, if that's what people consider racism today, I'm sure no one could really tell you the reason why, as there are so many. I think a lot of people who see both sides of this either do or don't think there's still more work to do, and if so, whether it's actually worth doing. In this book, she explains how the radical push for feminism is both emasculizing and criminalizing strong families. She reveals the fallacy of socialism and its very argument that the same government crippled America in the first place. And lastly, she exposes the inefficiency of the left-wing public education system and tackles the media's role in the collective brainwashing of our youth. Her words, not mine. This begins with her story, because Candace Owens, to my knowledge, is a rather controversial figure on social media, and there's a lot of conjecture as to why she believes what she does. Despite this, what I do think is really cool is how open she is about her story and background. It just projects this very trailblazery spirit. Like, I get that to a lot of people this sounds totally ridiculous. I do, but this is very important to me, and I'm not backing down. This message she's promoting, a message of personal responsibility and self-empowerment and freedom, as opposed to victimhood and over-dramatization and dependence. When there are so many people seemingly fighting against it today, I can't help but think it's nothing more than just one side of the coin. And yet, I do not think that this pulls substance out of what people can get from the book. Well, maybe not entirely. Just bear with me. Amidst a description of Black American struggle being more due to single-parent households than anything else, she finds herself repeatedly revisiting something called the Great Society, a series of government programs run by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964 to 65, who said he'll quote-unquote have those N-words with the ER voting Democrat for the next 200 years. That's so hard for me to believe. I always thought LBJ was like this cool, persuasive dude who loved everyone and everyone loved him. LBJ, arguably one of the greatest politicians of 20th century America, both convinced Black America that he was their greatest savior and ensured that they would be forever in need of saving. Black America was both freed and enslaved again within one presidency. That's so absurd. Whether it's true or not, it just sounds really crazy. The chapter on feminism is the part where I really started to scratch my head. The reason why actually has nothing to do with disagreement. Let me tell you guys a confession I usually don't talk about on this channel. There was a time in my life when I was, and if you know about Candace Owens, maybe you know about this, a red pillar. The red pill is an anti-feminist movement that started on the great internet forum Reddit. The red pill might not actually exist anymore on Reddit. The last time I checked it was like quarantine, and not in the stay at home for 6 weeks to stop the spread sense. So anti-feminism is a hat that at some point I wore, but with as much pride as I could manage without letting it deeply affect my social and emotional life. With all the effort I ultimately put into keeping it on, today it's merely, yet certainly something I can tell you that I understand. After some time, my passion for self-education overrode? I think it's one of those. Really, any interest I had in what's right or wrong regarding gender inequality. Issues in the world became more important to me, like mediocrity in every sense of the word, education and media, and how regardless of external sources of influence who are at fault, they have conditioned us not to believe in ourselves or each other. And not economic inequality, but just the spread of like poisonous, scarcity-based beliefs about money and also about happiness. I could be wrong for sure, but the way I see it, these just don't have to do with one's political stances. And letting your political stances get in the way of your everyday life, I would say, is a huge reason for such a big divide between political parties. These are a bigger problem to me than probably any of the problems in this book. In fact, it's probably a reason for so many of them to begin with. Candace Owens, you could probably label as an extremist, maybe just as easily as Ben Shapiro. There's something about Ben Shapiro, however, that's just, I've only reviewed one of his books so far, but he seems a lot hungrier for the truth than Owens. A lot of this book is informative. The little history lessons about things like, Democratic KKK leaders and LBJ, they can be unexpected and illuminating at the same time. But smaller examples take us to the more recent extremist stands of the Democratic Party about abortion and sexual harassment, and none of those things at all regarding the Republican Party. And I wonder why that is. I guess it's okay to do that. I mean, it's one perspective you're putting on display here. But these are extreme examples, and although it's very, very drastically different content, I don't think there's that much more that someone can really learn from extreme examples on one side than from the other. The first thing I would change about this book is how much she didn't take the chance to acknowledge that. To me, this was a problem, maybe not to others, but I imagine it makes this all of a harder pill to swallow for people who don't understand it initially, and you can't say that those people aren't important. And the reason I didn't think this with Ben Shapiro is that he is much more logical and notably less bitter about why things are the way they are. And that's not necessary all the time. It definitely isn't. But for a book with a purpose like this one's, I would say it is. In the chapter on socialism and government handouts, for people struggling to make ends meet who are unemployed and drowning in medical debt, the idea of living in a society in which the government provides all basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, sounds appealing. But the realities of socialism never match its grandiose ideals. Only those in power are afforded a good life with all the privileges we now enjoy. Conversely, those on the bottom rungs of society struggle to barely get by, the difference being that they are now prevented from ever moving up life's ladder. By those in power, who's she talking about? People who are in government or people who are just really rich? So they're not really the same thing. There are a lot of millionaires in government, but there are over 2,000 billionaires now in the world. Over a third of them are Americans. We're a very innovative country. And there's no way that more than 10 of them have ever touched a career in politics. Also, she talks about topics like this with this super low energy tone. To say, quote unquote only those and prevented from ever moving up life's ladder. Makes it sound like it's not a choice, no matter the political climate, no matter the president, to increase your income and live a more secure, comfortable lifestyle. I don't know where I got these numbers. I swear that I've heard each of them from more than one book, and if you look it up, you'll probably find either them or something similar. But 1,700 new millionaires are created every day. Over 80% of them, 80%, over 80%, do not come from money. And you're telling me in such a socialist society that that's the case. By the way, in case it's not obvious, I do want to stress that I am not trying to take a stand for socialism here. But my point is that this limited thinking of you and I, we're being put in a box. No matter how true it gets, it's only going to get less true in ways that most people are overlooking. In the chapter on media, this one part stood out. Another example of the bias I was worried about before starting the book. And again, like twisting the truth and not looking at the other side of things, the statistics that completely contradict how the actual situation is of police brutality. Between 90 and 95% of civilians killed by police officers were violently attacking either the cop or another person when they were killed, and while the media loves to report that blacks are repeatedly gunned down while their cell phone or another item is mistaken for a gun, these incidents are rare. Okay? I get that. That makes plenty of sense. So the question is, if McDonald's perspective, Cesario's report, and the FBI's data are all true, what does the media gain by promoting an opposing false narrative? Why would news organizations seek to frighten an entire community with tales of incessant, unprovoked violence? The answer is simple. By portraying blacks as sitting ducks or target dummies for trigger-happy cops, the entire black community is made to feel victimized and thus in need of a Democrat savior. Or maybe they just want to stir up chaos because they know that it's going to keep everyone's attention monetizable. I have heard a lot about like the need for justice. I've never heard any Democrats say that they need a Democrat savior. Also, Candace Owens talks a lot about fake news, but Fox does the same thing for Republicans as CNN does for Democrats. It's just examples everywhere all the time, 24/7, that further confirm low energy echo chamber beliefs. These just sound like such point the finger, clouded perspectives. And please do not think that I like hated this book or anything, because I don't disagree with her really at all about a lot of these things. Like, the media is so disempowering, it's extremely toxic, and the most unhappy, self-victimized people I ever met watch and talk about and think about the news all the time. I hate Fox and CNN and just about every major news source, but especially those two, because they notoriously do so much worse than inform. By the way, she has this whole chapter about excuses, and the thing about like her friend Alexa giving up on Hollywood and LA because she thought it was racist, sexist, and xenophobic. What is that? Arnold Schwarzenegger was made fun of constantly for his name and his accent, for sure, before he actually got anywhere with acting. And at the time, he actually had quite a power base. You can look into his what's it called, Total Recall. Allegedly, he wasn't American enough, but he was definitely more than committed enough, as you can probably see. The fact is, regardless of her experience, given his and probably so many other people's, Alexa wasn't. The marketplace is more often than ever not political. It's brutal. Alexa's excuses were political, and if it's an excuse, it's a reason not to succeed. Some people might think that sounds unfair. I think it sounds empowering. Why weren't they reasons to succeed? What's the name of that trans actress who played Sophia on Orange is the New Black? You can say whatever you want about trans people, and I guess the political stances of that show kind of makes me wish I had a less political example of a show to give you guys. But making it on a show of that popularity level is not easy. I will add, though, the story about at the end of the chapter about Candace Owens starting like a YouTube channel and paying off her debt, and now she's getting paid to speak all over the country, and she's met the president. It's because she was raised by a grandfather who took crap all his life and never made excuses and kept going. I found that pretty inspiring. The chapter on culture said a lot about like musicians and actors endorsing political views and figures that support the leftist agenda. And this chapter touched way more on George Floyd than any other. I'm kind of surprised in retrospect that she didn't talk about COVID, but I swear it's kind of insane. She almost made George Floyd sound like he deserved to die, or that it's like not wrong that he was killed, or like if the cop wasn't even there, he would have killed himself by accident anyway. But when you see something and hear about something for years, and you see it all over the place online and in real life, and you and your friends talk about it constantly, you begin to believe so strongly in it that I don't know why, maybe depending on what, maybe a bunch of different things, your personality, your perception, whatever they are, when you're presented with hard evidence, whatever the evidence is that contradicts it, the very last thing that you want is to accept that the evidence is even there. It's almost blinding, and I think that this is such a natural behavior in humans that only the most self-aware people can avoid it. I bet I did a lot of it in this video. There's a lot in this book that I can't say I disagree with. Like the socialism chapter, it was so fire. I really like that chapter. But I'm not a fan of the very all too occasional way that she approaches viewpoint presentation. Perhaps clearly, I have rather mixed feelings. Sure, there are many empowering ideas and principles in Blackout about owning your mistakes and growing into the person you're proud to be, but Owens too heavily politicizes their antitheses in a way that, although there may be some truth to them, although there may be some undeniable facts that many of us are quick to dismiss, it sounds like too frequently an externalized stretch to really solidify those ideas and principles, and for me, that's what made Blackout a little hard to digest. Quotes. We cannot rely on a hopelessly inefficient and burdensome government to fix what we ourselves refuse to do. This is a question the author asked herself that changed her life. What if the world wasn't happening to Candace Owens, but Candace Owens was happening to the world? Quite frankly, I wasn't much interested in keeping up with popular hip-hop songs because J.K. Rowling had released another installment of Harry Potter, and I was racing home to read it every day before any of my friends could spoil the ending. Whether you believe in everything or you believe in nothing, you believe in something. Direction 1. I recommend this book for people who would consider themselves politically open-minded. For me, some of the ways she presented her viewpoints were a little bit extra, and for others I would consider at least trying to overlook. Direction 2. If you like this book, I think you'd really like How to Destroy America in 3 Easy Steps by Ben Shapiro. Blackout by Candace Owens. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If you guys buy anything through the links in the description, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. What books do you guys want me to check out next? Please let me know in the comments below as well. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I feel like this is going to be like a 16-17 minute long review, and if someone watches this far into it, I don't get why they don't subscribe, but if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I'll see you then.